What's up, Myco fam? Thanks for joining us today on the Myco Mentor podcast, where we get you face to face with some of the best talent in the mycology space, whether it's a mycopreneur running a business, a citizen scientist making a difference, or someone doing something interesting with mushrooms. Our goal is to showcase and amplify passionate people in the mycology space. Today we have with us somebody who you might not recognize in the mycology space, but somebody who's been prominent in the cannabis space. We have with us today Dustin Powers, also known as Future4200. Dustin, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So let's just dive right in. You know, when people think about you, they think about extraction. They think about cannabis. They don't really think about mushrooms. What led you to start tapping into the mushroom space, and where are you at with it?
Yeah. So in 2012, I used some of my cannabis money and I didn't have very much of that money at the time. And I owner financed some land down in Southwest Washington and stumbled into, kind of a mecca for wild mushrooms. And I didn't know anything about mushrooms at the time. And when a local buddy that we had met came out to the property and I was cutting down trees, and he came and he was looking around. He's like, "Wow, you're standing on a gold mine here. What are you talking about?" And he started picking chanterelles. And at the time I was like, "What the heck are these?" And he's like, "Man, these are the best mushrooms that grow out here." And I was like, well, I don't understand. He's like, just look at the mushrooms. They're chanterelles. Don't you know? Didn't you do this as a kid? And then left. And I was like, what the hell? And so I went and joined the local mushroom club in Olympia and started going on forays and started getting involved in the mycology and started going to various conferences around the Pacific Northwest and just kind of like got into that side of mushrooms real heavily, into mycology deeply, really. And before that, and probably since about 2008, in 2008 I started eating mushrooms as a senior in high school, and then that evolved into.
Now you're talking about like magic mushrooms, right?
Magic mushrooms. Started eating magic mushrooms in 2008. So that was kind of the extent of my mushroom knowledge. Is some that you eat get you high, and some are not good and come on a pizza. Right. And my life has completely changed since as I realized how integrated mycology is into all things life. And so currently I'm down a bunch of different wormholes. One is a project that you and I have worked on together, which is getting the standards for the lion's mane extract. So I've been working my analytical connections through the cannabis space to get the standards into a lab so that we can start product testing our lion's mane extracts. And then another one, I'm working with Murphy Murray and an administrative team in Denver where we do a mushroom extraction, like introductory mushroom extraction class. And that one's going, I'm a minority partner. I just put people that knew what they were doing together for that one.
Sure.
And same, we got, you're on board the team now helping us out, which is great to have your expertise. And then most of my mycology is amateur, right? It's hobby. It's just, I enjoy doing it. I'm surrounded by mushrooms, and mushrooms are kind of a part of life. So I'm just, as everybody else is, I'm just immersed into mycology.
Well, and let's just look at this from a different perspective. People who know you in cannabis and don't think of you as the mushroom guy, they might be saying, this guy's just a Chad. He's just trying to get into it for the money. Let's dive into that a little bit. And like you said earlier, let's kind of quantify a Chad. Let's put a name and a definition to it. What is a Chad from your perspective? Because from my perspective, all I know is mushrooms. I don't know cannabis. But we see a lot of people coming in from cannabis who are, seeing dollar signs and trying to get their money in mushrooms now. I don't think that's you, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah, in my mind, a Chad is somebody that comes from outside of an industry. They have a bunch of money. They, like you said, they see dollar signs. They say, hey, I can invest a bunch of money into this, whatever the project is. And then when it grows, I'm going to sell it out at whatever cost. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what happens when I sell this out or what happens to the industry on my path to that point. My whole goal here is here's an investment I can make to sell down the road and then be out of it and quick money, wash my hands, and I'm done. Because I'm not interested in mushrooms or any of that shit. I wasn't interested in weed. I'm just interested in dollars. Right. That in my mind is a Chad, someone that comes and uses, abuses, and leaves. First and foremost, I don't. My plan is not to make any money in mycology. I don't make money in mycology. I'm a 10% partner of MRS, and that business doesn't make that much money, right? The margins are pretty tight. Right. We're just educating people. I'm big on education. So like you and me and trying to figure out standards. You know who's going to make more money off that? It's you, not me. I don't make any money off making sure lion's mane extracts have standards. and where I've kind of fallen into place in the cannabis industry and in all the other industries that I interface in life is I'm a relationship guy. I'm not here to make money on every single interaction. What I do is I connect the right people together. And when they do better in their lives, often they remember that I was the guy that set it up. And they said, hey, we're having a party, come over. Or, like, let me buy you dinner when you're in town, right? And it's like, or we have this new opportunity we think you'd be great in because of your connections. And then, so it's not even how I make a living. I invested really well when I was young on random ideas like Bitcoin and land, and it's paid off handsomely. And now I spend my life like improving the lives of other people. So I've been in mycology forever. My goal is not to build something to sell it. I don't plan on growing mushrooms for sale. I don't plan on extracting mushrooms for profit. None of that. I like the mushrooms that grow in my yard that are integrated into my systems. I like the mushrooms that grow in my gut and making sure my family has healthy gut mushrooms, right? That's what I'm after. Dollars are the lowest form of capital in my mind. My health, the health of my family and the health of the relationships of the people around me, that's the most important form of capital in my mind. And that's what I'm striving to build. So when I step into an industry, like onto the industrial side of mushrooms, which, like I said, I used to sell enough mushrooms so that I could eat mushrooms for free. That was about as industrial as I ever got.
That's the goal, right?
Back in the day, right? Yes, that's
sure.
A slippery slope. But I have no intention moving forward to step on anybody's toes, that wants to chase dollars with mushrooms. And I would argue that you're the Chad, not you, but that person that is the Chad. Right. Yeah. And that's the silliness of calling people Chads is there is a specific group of people that are Chads, and it's the people that don't give a fuck about the industry or any of it. It's just they see only the dollar signs.
Well, I think like the people that are in this space already, they can identify the Chads really quickly, but I don't think that people who aren't embedded in the industry in any capacity, who aren't passionate about this, they don't really know. But we're seeing these companies popping up all over the place, left and right. I said 5 years ago that it was the mushroom golden age, and I think we're just starting to scrape the surface of the golden age in the business side of mushrooms, because now with legalization, the natural progression, it seems to be, is people get excited about magic mushrooms, and then they get excited about gourmet mushrooms right after that, or medicinal mushrooms.
For sure.
And that's like most people's trajectory. But yeah, definitely, I think you nailed it with the definition of the Chad. And I've seen a lot of them. I've been approached by a lot of them for consults. People, especially pharma. Pharma's really interested in monopolizing the medicinal mushrooms and the psychedelic mushrooms. I had one guy from Jamaica. He's in Canada. He wanted me to go to Jamaica, and he was like, just grow everything. Just grow whatever you can, as much as you can. And then when I told him I needed a team of like 30 people to do it, and it's unreasonable, he was like, that sounds like too much work, and he backed out.
Yeah, was he talking about free economic zones in Jamaica?
No, he didn't mention any of that. He just said, here, I've got a compound. You can grow whatever you want. And I was interested because he was like, hey, I'll pay $1,000 a day. And I was like, okay, well, what about my team? And as soon as I mentioned a team, he was like, what team? There's not a budget for that. I'm like, I can't do all this stuff. You have no idea what actually goes into growing, 1,000 pounds of mushrooms a month. Like that's crazy. Yeah. And so there's a lot of that. Now, in your circle, you've probably surrounded yourself with like-minded people who are well aligned with your values and your core beliefs. But do you know a lot of people on the cannabis side who are trying to do the same thing, like who we might consider Chads? Or like, what's it look like from your perspective being in cannabis and seeing the transition from cannabis to mushrooms?
Yeah, mostly the Chads have really worked themselves into MSO, and that's multi-state operators. And because of this illegality of the interstate commerce, it's really sectionalized the cannabis. So like, first sign that somebody's a Chad is they're like C-suite or above with a MSO, a multi-state operator. That's a surefire sign that these people are just in it for the money. So if you like, a lot of almost the majority of the people I interact with are single state operators that are like owner operators of their cannabis lab. That's my primary demographic because of some of the businesses that I've built. And then, 20% of the professional relationships I have in cannabis are outside of that. Some of them are multi-state brands. A lot of them are global enterprises, if you will. Yeah. You know what I mean? So legacy operators, and they don't give a fuck about your state line. So MSOs have never really been the early parts of like the Good Life Gang. There was a lot of sales to MSOs. They buy the membership and then use the discounts, which was the whole point. And then that interface them with our affiliate companies that sell equipment and consumables and such. But that kind of died off. Most of those Chad companies aren't even really cannabis companies. They kind of go through the motions. They suck at the motions, but that's not the point. The whole point was this stock market game really is, same way that all the tech startups run at a loss, but the IPOs will be in the billions of dollars. None of the math really makes sense, but that's not the point. And we watched this go through the cycle in Canada because they had the first publicly traded companies and they blew up. And the problem with it is in that pursuit for a higher stock price, they're willing to just tank the market. They'll just produce a bunch of shit and sell it for basically nothing just to have volume, and that drags the whole thing down. So surviving that. And I talked about this in Miami a couple of years ago at the psychedelic conference there. Oakland Hyphae was on the stage. We were in a panel. We were going on about this. Like, you have to be that's what's coming for the mushroom space. Is like you said, all these
it's happening now. It's happening now, man. It's crazy.
We were saying it then, and it's happening right now, where they're going to jump in. They only care about their stock price because that's how they sell this thing for more. That's like the definition of a Chad. We'll destroy the industry in pursuit of a higher stock price. So when they exit, that's it. Hear the word exit plan? Fucking Chad, for sure. they're just in to make money and get out, and they don't care about mushrooms or anything that happens underneath. And the thing is, if you want to play around with dollars and mushrooms, you're in that game. That's the game. It's like design. If you want to be profitable and wealthy off of mushrooms and still good for the earth, start looking at how you can interact with the world and mushrooms and not dollars. Because once you get into the dollars, that's that key defining thing right there, is those dollars start making it a part of the game.
Well, from your perspective in regenerative agriculture, cannabis, and mushrooms, how would somebody approach that? How to not look at the dollars, because that's something that we all struggle with as business owners. Is we need to make a living, right? You got to pay the bills. And most of us in the mushroom space, I don't want to generalize, but most of us are genuinely just passionate about mushrooms. We really get excited about that. We're not business people, so we don't know how to balance that. What advice would you have for somebody who's trying to do that without chasing the dollars, to make that harmonious balance
shit's tricky,
happen?
Dude. One of them is your skills and your knowledge are valuable, right? So if you can monetize your skills so that you don't have to literally sell the mushrooms, that's it's a way to work around it a bit. And obviously it's just like a little mental jump because it's still kind of the same thing, right? Your skills are from the mushroom. So I don't know, man. That's a tough one. And it's what led me to stop selling the plant. Right. And stop, because I was starting to feel unethical about monetizing the cannabis plant. And I was watching legalization happening. I was seeing kind of the waves you're starting to see now, and I was starting to feel bad about it. And like I said, I got really lucky. I got land when it was at the bottom of it was at the tail end of the 2008 collapse. It was in 2012. So it was kind of when the markets was bottoming, but starting to turn the corner. And so we got, a bunch of raw land with a bunch of trees on it for dirt cheap. $50,000 for 20 acres, and we paid $10,000 down and paid monthly payments on an owner finance.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I had no bank. No bank would have given me any fucking money at the time.
Nope.
And then also because of the nature of my business, I got into Bitcoin, and those two things combined has allowed me to take much more creative approaches to business. And what I found is that when I stop focusing on making dollars and I start focusing on building relationships, doing the best things, the dollars start pouring in from all different directions. It's crazy because one way to avoid having to sell things that you do is to become the guy in the space, right? You've kind of become the guy in the lion's mane extraction space. And you said, now people start throwing money at you and you start filtering through the chads and you find the ones that are actually, care about the earth, the ones that follow some semblance of permaculture ethics or something. And that's who you start working with. And if you start associating yourself with wealthy people, you may find the 10% of wealthy people that don't suck ass, that are actually decent people.
I don't know if it's 10%, but maybe somewhere in that ballpark. But it's really important what you said about becoming the guy, becoming the expert, becoming something. When I first got into mushrooms, lion's mane has always been my thing, but there was nobody just doing lion's mane, and that's their thing. And so for me, it was okay, I have my grow kits, I have my cultures, I have all this, and people think of me when they think of lion's mane, and that's invaluable. You can try and do everything, but if you're the master at one thing and everybody knows you as that's you can't put a price on that at all. all. You really can't. I think as a business owner in a market that was once a niche market that's now becoming saturated, it's very critical that you establish yourself as somebody who does something very specific. And so I think that's like the best advice we can give any business owner in this space or in any space, really, because you just want to be that thing. When people think about the thing and they think about you, that's it. That's nobody else. And so that's worth its weight in gold. Absolutely.
Well, and
let's talk about your Bitcoin a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Let me just say one more thing. It's not about the dollars that you make; it's how you spend them. So, as a good permaculturist, you should strive to obtain the most amount of surplus possible. That's the whole goal. And then it's what you do with that surplus, right? So if the surplus in your business is dollars, spend those dollars as ethically as possible. If you spend them making the world a better place, then it's all, great, make more dollars. Like that's the whole point. So just convert them into something that's valuable, I think. And then you like that helps me sleep at night, right? Like you said, everybody needs dollars. Like it sounds great to have no dollars, but fuck, good luck. You gotta make dollars and you gotta spend them wisely. That's the key.
Yeah, you can't be blowing all your money on hookers and blow.
Yeah, I mean, you could for a little while, I guess. People have.
You could, but you're not going to feel good about it at the end of the day.
No,
that's
probably
for sure.
aren't. Bitcoin.
So I wanted to talk about your Bitcoin though. When did you get in? Because I was looking at getting in, and I think it was 2009, maybe 2010, early 2010. And all my friends were like, "No, you're fucking stupid, James. Like you can't. This is magic internet money. This doesn't make sense." And I almost did. I almost bought like $5,000 worth of Bitcoin and was like, "All right, let's do this." But then my friends convinced me not to because they're like, "You're stupid. This doesn't make any sense." And like I kick myself all the time when I see the price. I think it just went up to like 44,000 or something today. I'm like,
yeah. So same.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, but whatever.
Yeah.
But when'd you get in?
Like, so same thing, like 2008, 2009, I'm senior in high school. I'm reading about it and telling my business partner at the time, who's still my primary business partner in like my land endeavors. I was like, hey, check this thing out. Let's buy this. He's like, but we could spend that money on, the normal re-up. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Let's get the normal re-up. That sounds better. And then circle around to 2011, right? 2012, right before we buy the land. It's kind of all right at the same time. It starts becoming like a mandatory form of currency for some of our businesses. Like the business only operates in Bitcoin. So we just started working in Bitcoin. And because we were up in the Pacific Northwest, we had all the buyers and, we had the product going out and the way to turn it back into, cash on this side. So we're kind of in this little sweet spot where I just started accumulating Bitcoin. And then over the years, up until the first time it spiked right to about 20 grand, 17 grand, I think was that first crazy spike. Cause it was like $150 when we first got in. It dipped a bit, went up, came back down around to there. When it first spiked to that 20 grand, we went and dug up a bunch of old work phones that had, a Bitcoin on it or a couple Bitcoins on it. Cause it was just at the time is a little bit, whatever, like, oh, forget about it. It's the end of the cycle on this phone. And so that was our first real come up on them. Cause it went from like shit that I forgot about to, wow, this is now like my largest investment. This shit on old phones now become the most valuable thing I own by a mile. Like, holy shit. And during this, my buyer is saying, hey, there's the other coins coming up. You should buy in. You want to get them? And I was like, dude, I barely understand this Bitcoin thing. Like, I'm too busy for this. It sounds nice, but I don't understand. I barely understand this. And I go show up, and he's like, hey, this is the last time we can meet. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm moving to Puerto Rico. I'm retiring. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, you remember all those Litecoins I was telling you about when it were like less than a penny? Well, it's worth $100 right now. And I just sold most of mine, and I'm out. Like, I'm not working ever again. I was like, no. And he's like, yeah, you bought some, right? It's like, no. And so he said, man, check it out. I got like a list of 50 more potential ones that are going to be great. And so we dumped a bunch of Bitcoin into those 50, and most of them flopped entirely. Like 4 of them hit huge. And, when those hit over their various times, and I still sit on most of those because like Dogecoin's one that I bought a bunch of really early and it didn't ever do anything. And then all of a sudden one day it was like hitting the jackpot again. You just open it up and you're like, wow, Dogecoin's worth some money. Let's go look at this. Is one of our throwaways back in the day. And then I always just convert that back into typically Bitcoin, although I hold a little bit of a diverse portfolio. I still have a mountain of XRP, which is one of the ones that we got into super early, and I sold at like just almost the premium price, like crazy on it. And I only sold half of them, but I still have a shit ton of them. So, and for anyone playing along, no foresight here. This is not because I was smart. This is not, there was no planning involved. This is all just accidental dumb luck. And I would not suggest this be your primary investment. Like, you know, get your food preps right, buy some like guns, gold, silver, ammo, not in that order, land, then start looking at Bitcoin, right? Like, and the best way to get into Bitcoin, go buy $5 of it a month, right? Or $10 of it a month. Every month buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. That's how you get into Bitcoin. That's the safe play.
Man, I know back in the day, back when I was playing in the dark web, and that's where I'd get all my drugs, I spent so many Bitcoins that I regret, where I'm like, man, like, and I'll sit there and think about it. I'm like, you know, it adds up to about 20 or 30 Bitcoins total from my workings in there. And I'm just like, what the hell? Yeah. I wish I had the foresight. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to get stoned, and I wanted the good shit from out west.
Yeah, no, I was just on the other end, my friend.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting time because like before like legalization happened everywhere, like if you got your shit from the darknet, like you had the best. You had Primo.
Oh, bro, we were good. Slaying. We were selling Southern Oregon outdoor as is, and just cutting the market because we were getting it for so cheap, and people were stoked, bro. And a lot of people would be selling. They would just mislabel it, call it depths, or and I'm sure the people that we sold it to looked at it and sold it as depths, but we just were on it for like, look, this is outdoor weed. It's just much better outdoor weed than you're used to seeing, and it was for outdoor weed is fire. Southern Oregon is just like, especially if you've got a grower down there that's been doing it for the years and knows what's going on. Like some of the best looking weed comes from there, and the nose on it's incredible because it's all outdoor. And man, the darknet markets was an interesting thing.
That was a very interesting time in my life. Now I've got a kid, I've settled down, and stuff's more available.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, that game's different now. It's not. We just got into it right in the mecca and got out at the right time.
Yeah, well, the industry and the cannabis side of things has really bottomed out and cratered, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And you see there's waves where it's like it craters, everybody flees, and then there's a little bit of a scarcity. So then the prices start to come up, and then the people are like, oh, it's back, I'm here again. And then, cycle. So we've kind of been going, like it was a roller coaster. We were like, everything was great. Come like 2014, legalization starts really hitting around, and it's like been on a downward, like wavy ride down from there. Never will go back to the golden days.
No, well, and like, so I had a buddy over the other day, and we were talking about how low prices for mushrooms are in California, and like the lowest I had heard of up until that point was 125 per pound, and then he was like, "No, bro, 85 a pound," and like just 3 months ago, the lowest was $250 a pound, and it's like you said though, like these guys come in, they just shatter the market, lower the price, but on the other side, some of those guys, like I have a friend who is supervising a grow in California, it's something like 2,000 pounds a month, and they were like, oh, we can't sell this right now because the market's so saturated. What else can we do? And so like even like the large scale cubensis growers are now like looking for other ways to make money in the space, and there's not really. Yeah, well, I wish they'd get out because, a lot of people are hurting. I've got a lot of friends who just quit growing because they can't sustain themselves anymore. And there's some people who just keep the price up because they say, hey, this is my price. If you want it from me, you get it. And like I respect that a lot because I think they're going to be able to stick it out in the long term. But we're seeing so many ups and downs in the market and so many people coming and going. I just hope that it doesn't completely kill a lot of the people who are passionate about this stuff, right? Because they're the ones that are paving the ways and making the discoveries that big corporations would never figure out.
What's cool about mushrooms now is that the demand is way up, because back in the day, like when we used to buy, boxes of it, it was cheap because there was nobody to sell it to really. Like, who do you sell bulk? It was hard to find enough people to because people would eat the mushrooms once and then be done. Like, I'm out because it was not microdosing or anything like that. Maybe like once every 6 months I'll eat a bunch of mushrooms, you crazy fuck. And so the prices were dirt cheap. It was actually crazy because there's this oversupply basically. But the biggest problem is to diversify. If you want to monocrop mushrooms, then you're going to fucking lose when the market changes. That's agriculture. That's commodities. That's how it works. Like, diversify. You want to play commodity games. The real reason I got out of cannabis, like production, because I didn't want to be an industrialist. If you want to be an industrialist, there's way better industries than cannabis, man. Go find something you enjoy doing and it's kind of stable, because cannabis isn't it. Mushrooms are the same thing. You want to be an industrialist, like you better be ready to play the industrialist game or you're going to lose, because that's what it's become. It's become a commodity game, and that's how these things work. If you want to grow craft mushrooms, fuck yeah, do that. on your little homestead with all the others, like with all 10, 15 of your other income streams, right? Because that's how you need to be resilient to market changes. Because if you are reliant on selling that crop of mushrooms to pay your bills, you're fucked. You're at the whims of the market, right? You have to be able to afford to hold out. And so it goes back to what I was saying earlier, get your preps right? Like if you've got 6 months of income saved and your bills saved and you've got 6 months of food saved up, you can ride out those waves. And there's we made, and I know people that made exponentially more money on just specifically distillate on those waves where for 6 months there'd be way too much and for 6 months there'd be none. The same with weed. If you could buy weed in the fall and hold it and keep it good quality until the middle of the summer back in the day, bro, you were in the like big money, huge, like double. It would double its money at least. And the disty was the same way. So same with the mushrooms. If you can afford to grow crops and sit on them and hold and wait for the market price, the problem is you don't want to end up like the guys did with the CBD isolate, where they're like, I can afford to hold it, and the price just never came back. It went from 40K down to 100 for kilos, and it did come back from 100. It's $400, $300 to $400 a kilo is pretty much the stable CBD isolate price. It bounced back up a little higher because the crash just killed everybody, and then there was nobody left to make it. So those guys that held out didn't lose as much money. But man, I watched a lot of Chads just lose the whole nut because they refused to sell for $100 cheaper. They're like, it's going to come back. I won't go under 1,000. There's so many. By the time they finally sold it,
what happened to cause it to crash? Was it like Chinese imports?
No. It's the same thing as mushrooms. It's the same thing as weed. Risk reward, bro. If everybody's doing it, then there's a massive supply. It's no longer illegal. So now literally everybody's doing it. That's the difference. That's what's happened with mushrooms. It's become socially acceptable. It's become much more legal and basically legal in several spots, right? Like Oakland and Colorado, or Denver, at least. You can effectively grow legal psychedelic mushrooms. And then, what you do with them from there kind of muddies the water on how legal what you're doing. But just the fact that your grow's not going to get rated there is big. That's huge. And then you see in the news, there'd be you see like 19-year-olds have got a whole fucking house that they probably got on some loan because our whole housing loan market's about to collapse for the same exact reason again, because they're giving out insane loans for shit boxes that they say are $700,000, and you got kids fill the whole thing up with mushroom grows. He's like 19-year-old little industrialist. That's everywhere, dude. And you better believe, like up here for us, it's the organized Asian crime. They ran the houses and neighborhoods to grow weed. They've switched over to large scale mushroom production. And the scariest thing about all of this is you go into a smoke shop right now in like southern United States, like Texas, and it's got a bunch of weed that they're calling hemp, but right next to it they've got gummies galore, and it's the like mushroom gummies or amanita gummies.
Yeah,
the problem with all of this is that if anything, like me and Dinkelberg were just looking at a COA, and because someone sent it to me and I sent it to him to look at, I was like, dude, tell me, am I crazy or is this fucked? And it's just like a stew of research chemicals, a couple of like cues that maybe there was some origin here with like some naturally extracted psilocybin perhaps, and then there actually was mucimol in it, but there was a shit ton more ibotenic acid. I was like, this is the most fucked up COA I've ever seen. So somebody did some kind of conversion with some psilocybin, probably synthetic. They also mixed in a bunch of research chemicals, and then they took like the crude extract from amanita and they didn't decarb it at all, full ibotenic acid. Like, what the fuck? And dude, so many of those. I wouldn't be surprised if less than 1% of the amanita market out there actually has amanita extract in it. It's just all.
Well, it's like, I don't know. Amanita's cool, but it's like if you've got cubensis and it's readily available, like why even go through the trouble, right? Like I've never taken it,
bro. Not cool.
I'm not that into it. Like
those are not psychedelics. Those are not narcotic. I forget what they call it, but it's like makes you go to sleep and have nightmares. Basically, that's like the summary.
Well, it's like this. You know how like we've got cannabis and then we've got salvia. It's like the salvia of mushrooms. Like I don't want to. I'm not about that life, and I don't know. People just want to get fucked up at the end of the day, and that's okay. Like I understand that. That's why these products sell. Like I have a friend who's just like, "Hey, I have a big demand right now for these research chemicals." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like, I don't know why people are when they have so many other things available. Like I don't know why people are drawn to these things, but it is what it is. It's the state of the market, and like. I don't know. You won't catch me eating any gas station gummies. That's for
Please
sure.
don't. I suggest nobody eat gas station gummies.
Nobody loved that gummy, man. And throughout the entirety of from it being an idea to in production, nobody ever loved that. All they cared about it's the Chads, right? Those are the Chads.
He
who are making
loves
those
the money
products.
that came from it. He loves it.
That's it.
You want to support Chads?
That's it.
Get yourself some gas station gummies.
Well, and it'll be like $5 a gummy too. It's like, bro, like that's insane.
Nuts,
like,
big money.
I don't know. You talk about Dinkelberg. Dinkelberg's. I'm going to interview him in a little bit. He and I have gone back like 3 or 4 years. He's a good dude. He's definitely helped me out quite a bit. I've learned a lot from him.
He's wrecked me with some of like. He gave me a fucking bag of his gummies in Vegas. Every time I see him, he's got a new bag of gummies for me, and so I read it, and this guy's top of the class as far as this game goes, like mushroom extraction and manufacturing gummies and stuff. So he gives it to me. I read the label. I eat them, and I'm it's full on party. I got 600 people, BizCon party, and I've hit 2 of his gummies, which should have been based on the dosage my perfect, kind of like just at or below microdose, right? Like just barely aware. Instead, it put me like solidly into like a low dose macro. And so I see him the next day. I was like, yo, the fuck? And he just looks at me like, yeah, they're a little more potent. I didn't even say anything to him. He's like, yeah, they're a little more potent than the bag says. That's why I gave it to you, because it was like a off run. I had to wreck them all because they were too potent. I miscalculated at some point the potency here. And so I had to scrap the whole batch, but I figured you'd appreciate him. He's like the perfect for parties.
Bro, even his regular production stuff, like I'll have one and I'll be like, that's definitely not a microdose, but like I don't
there's
know.
Something going on with the bio. It's not, the math is all correct. It's the effect based is different than what the math plays out. Like real life is different than what the math says. Like there's some kind of synergy going on with probably the ingredients in his gummies and the extract that's creating some sort of bioavailability bump. And really what it is just it's getting past some point of your digestive system that it becomes more absorbable whenever it gets to the other side, where previously it may have been destroyed by something like the acids in your stomach could have just wrecked it before it got into your short intestine or whatever the wherever the optimal point is, which is like and this is all testable by boofing. So if you don't believe me, go ahead.
I'm gonna boof one of his gummies after this.
Yeah.
No, but it might be like when you take it and you put it in like concentrate form. Maybe your stomach can just pull it out immediately instead of having to really digest it. So
there's no chitin there. It's broken free of its chitin, and you lack the ability to digest chitin for a long ways down into the body, and to the point where you'll just waste a bunch of your actives if you don't chew it up good enough or grind it up good enough, because you'll just shit it out. So, and that's part of why the extracts are widely reported as having much less negative side effects, and most of those negative side effects
nausea
are like gut issues, gut rot, because you've just eaten a bunch of raw mushrooms, which don't do, like in every other instance I'm going to tell you, do not eat raw mushrooms. It's the only one that only because of the psilocybin. Otherwise, if the active ingredients were there, you'd don't eat raw mushrooms.
No, and I'm a big proponent of that. But I like if I'm gonna eat raw mushrooms, I'm probably gonna lemon tech it just to skip all that stuff. Use the citric acid and do all that. But when I have access to all these concentrates and gummies and even people making tinctures from it, it's just like I'm just gonna go to that. It's so much more manageable. It's consistent. There's never really any deviation, and that's what I like about that. And it definitely makes it a little less intimidating too for a lot of people when they can just eat a gummy instead of having to munch through and eat the mushrooms like that. For some people, that's really off-putting. And I think that sets the tone to start off in a negative foot. When you're sitting there, you're like, this tastes like shit. I don't like it. For me, actually, like a cracker dry cubensis mushroom, like I love that taste. Like it's good.
Only if I'm eating an 8, then I'm specifically eating the fruiting body, because now we're on a fucking adventure here. This is the step one.
Yeah, we're going on a journey. We're going on a vision quest, right? Like it's time.
Exactly. You have to start that way. My day-to-day micro, I much prefer in a gummy or like a tincture, right? Like even over a capsule of ground up fruiting body. I'd rather an extract of some sort.
See, I never got anything from like the capsules that people sell as micros. People have sent them to me all the time. I take them every once in a while if I really know the guy. When random people send me shit, I'm just like, I don't know what you're doing, bud. But like I've taken them, and the capsules never really hit the same way. I don't know if it's because maybe they're using enteric capsules that are extended release or what the thing is, but it's been consistent with the gummies. Like every single time, it's just like, wow, this is good. And like even with Dingleberg's gummies, I'll cut it in half because I'm like, bro, if I take a full one, it's like a coin toss if I'm going to be like, all right, or if I'm going to be like, hey, I need to sit down for an hour or two.
Yeah.
You know? But so like while we're talking about that, like do you microdose every day? Do you have a protocol like week on, week off, 2 weeks on, or just like wake up and like, I need a microdose today?
I have zero protocol. I've done protocols and then I've not done protocols, and it's just, I realize that I don't really notice much of a difference versus like, or maybe I intrinsically know when I like my, okay, I kind of feel like I'll go get a mushroom now. So or a gummy and get a micro. And I feel like I like it that way better when it just like kind of speaks to me and I take it versus the structured micro.
Well, that's how I am with like most of my psychedelic use now. Back in the day, I was tripping all the time. Like you couldn't stop me from tripping.
There's been periods of my life where I've been high on mushrooms for long amounts of time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, for me, it was mostly acid in my youth. I was all about acid. I tried mushrooms a couple times when I was younger, but what really did it for me, what scratched the itch, was DMT. You know, I got into in a past life, I got into making DMT, and for me, I had access to as much as I wanted, so I would just do it, in copious quantities, far beyond what you should actually be doing as a reasonable person. But one day, I smoked some DMT, and I came back, and like that itch to trip all the time was gone. And I don't know what it was, but it definitely like changed something in me. So now it's like I wake up and I just get this feeling, like you said, it calls to you, or it's like, today's the day, like it's time, we need to do this. And so that's like my personal take on it too, is I just take it as needed. Are you on a microdose right now though, while we're talking about it?
Not today, no. Tomorrow, kind of one of my imperatives right now is to take it when I go foraging. Out on a foray. So tomorrow, Cassandra and Colton are coming down tonight and staying the weekend with us. Okay. So tomorrow we're going to go, I'm going to give him, Colton's never seen the permaculture farm, so we're going to go up the hill and do a tour of all the farms, and then we're going to go out. And the chanterelles are still fucking going hard out here right now. It's crazy.
Bro, you guys live in a mushroom wonderland. That's the one area of the U.S. I've never foraged, and I'm dying to.
Listen, now, this was the best year for King Boletes in like recorded Western history, right? I'm sure that the natives will tell you that there was a year, and I'm sure there was. But right. So in the last 150 years, we just had the best King Bolete season, hands down, like by a power of 100. Like where normally you'll find there's a few spots that are good King Bolete spots. Like there's this coastal pine forest. It's native pine forest. It's all relatively old growth, but they grow really small. And it grows this like crazy reed grass. And there's been multiple years where that spot's flushed with King Boletes, like in the grass. So it's really difficult to find them. But it's weird how you get really good at finding them even when you can't actually see them because of your pattern recognition of everything else that, like the type of trees they stuff. It's so. Anyways, normally only those like unique, specific microclimates, and then some of the old growth, which is few and far between out here because it's all commercial timber. This year, all of our best chanterelle spots were flushed with King Boletes. The newspaper did an article, which they never talk about mushrooms in the little local newspaper. They did an article. It's two like redneck dudes holding just bushels of King Boletes. Like, look at what we found. They got buckets out, dude. It's insane this year. So, yeah, it's been fun. And now our chanterelles are going late, which the chanterelles will often have seasons where the earliest I found them was right at the beginning of July, and now this is by far the latest I found like good, healthy golden chanterelles. So they've got a long season here. It's pretty nice.
Nah, man, it's a dream to get out to the Pacific Northwest and go foraging. I almost made it out there during COVID. During COVID, I had to take a break from COVID when it was at its tail end. It was like 3/4 of the way through. I was just like, oh, I'm sick of this. I'm going out west where they don't give a shit about COVID. And I took like a 3-week, 4-week. It was supposed to be a 4-week vacation. It was only 3 weeks because while I was out in California, my buddy called me and was like, hey, COVID's over here. They took away all the restrictions. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I just spent all this money to get away from COVID, and now it's gone. Like, I'm pissed. pissed, but I'm thankful. So after that, I was just like, fuck it, I'm not going up north. I'm just going right back home since it's over and I don't have to deal with this shit anymore. But yeah, so I almost made it. It was on the list. It was the last leg of the drive, and then we were going to drive back to Pennsylvania from Oregon. But yeah, man, that's a dream to get out there. I'll get out there eventually. It's just right now I'm locked into Pennsylvania, which is great. Like, it's the commercial mushroom capital of the U.S. And we do have a lot of good foraging, but our foraging season ends like October is like the last hurrah for us, and that's when ours pretty
is
much it.
Like turning on to peak. October, November. I mean, really, October is just fucking peak. So like September, it's really starting to ramp. October, it's blowing up, and November is usually still pretty good. This year it got real cold in November, but then December it was mild as shit. So the chanterelles just kept pumping. It's dope. They're still going good now.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get some better foraging this year because we had 70, 80 degree days almost in December. But now it tanked. And now we're down like below freezing, and we're back to something resembling normal. But the weather's been fucking crazy for us, and that's really influenced the mushrooms this year for us. Like this year, I found a little bit of chicken. I didn't find any Hericium species. I know you found that one that ended up being like a slime mold or something.
Not a slime mold, but that was an interesting one. And then of course, I just don't ever want to ask Alan directly because that's most of the interaction.
Well, and he's doing so much shit. But
I know, but he still
he's the
finds
man.
time. Dude is the all-time king of INAT for this. Like, if you go look at his stats on INAT, it's like, dude, how do you have time for anything else? Like, you've got to. I don't understand how you could have so much time to interact with that app and identify so many people's mushrooms all over the world. You're crazy, man.
No, he's a fucking genius, man, when it comes to this mushroom shit. Like, I think I'm passionate, but he takes it to the next level. Where did I see he was at? Is he in Ecuador right now? I think he's like on a foray. He's always everywhere. He's always everywhere, man. He's like traveling.
A super high quality photographer as well.
Yeah. Well, Myco Fest, he had some of his prints on metal, and they look fucking really nice. But Myco Fest, 2 years ago, I got to finally meet him face to face because like somebody was running around Myco Fest like, hey, who's got agar plates? Who's got agar? And I was like, I do. Like, I brought some. And then so he comes walking up. He's trying to clone this mushroom, and we have to talk about his photography a little bit. It's pretty cool to see. I knew him from back in the day when I first started learning how to grow mushrooms 11 years ago on the Shroomery. I just knew he was like the fucking man, and I never talked to him or anything, but I knew of him, and so he's like this internet celebrity to me in this niche mushroom growing community. And so for me to meet him, it was pretty cool. And now he's working on some of the same things too with analytical testing for Hericium species specifically. I don't know if you're working together with him.
No,
or not.
I did not know he was working on it. I'll reach out to him. We've got a bunch of we've been making a lot of good progress. Those kids at the Evergreen College, they started a little group. It's like HART, HART. It's Hericium. It's basically that. They kind of stumbled into the same issue, and they were presenting to the Mushroom Club that I am a member of. And so I reached out, I talked to them all, and I got on a phone call with them, and I explained it to them. And they're probably the best lead right now to getting a standard developed because of their institutional connection. So they brought like their mentor into the call, and I was talking with him, some PhD guy that they were working under, and they're making really good strides right now. I think within the next month or two, we'll have like a full suite of standards.
Let's talk about that for a minute. For people who don't know what a standard is sort of like
It's a reference.
It's a reference that's agreed upon by everybody that says, X is a dose of Y, and this is Y. This is the research that says that. But with a lot of medicinal mushrooms, people or companies will use beta-glucans or polysaccharides or triterpenes as a marker, but it's not necessarily measuring a specific compound and saying, hey, this is a dose of your lion's mane, or this is a dose of your cordyceps, and this is how much arenosine A is in this lion's mane, or whatever arenosine. That's another part of the standard is the compounds that do the heavy lifting need to be understood, and the mechanism in the biology needs to be specified and say, okay, this compound does this function in the body, and that's something that is all over the place. But so a lot of companies will use like these beta glucans and things like that, but beta glucans can be spoofed. The testing is inconsistent. You can get beta glucans from the rice that your mycelium's grown on if you're doing myceliated grains. So they're not really effective markers, and the reason that we want to see this in the industry is so that we can say, hey, you're actually getting a dose of the thing that you're paying money for, and this is the lab report that says it. And so like for cordyceps, we can test cordyceps for cordycepin, got it. We can test it for adenosine, got it. But we can't really test lion's mane for specific compounds in a way that is agreed upon. So what we've been talking about with the standards is, he's working on helping to develop the standards so that way we can finally lift up this rock that hasn't been lifted up in the industry and better the products that are on the shelves. And I think when that happens, we're going to see 90% of the companies either change dramatically or just vanish because
Drop
they
off.
can't actually prove
Right.
that they're doing that. But so with Alan, I gave Alan a bottle of my lion's mane at Myco Fest, and he came back and was like, wow, can I get another one of those? Like, this is really good. I've never had lion's mane this good before. And like, for me, that was a good pat on the back. So I'm like, yeah, he's the man, but like to be able to quantify it is going to be huge.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for that moment in the space because
just
we
for
can sit there and say ours is the best all the time, but it doesn't
Yep.
matter until you can have a lab report.
Yeah, and for the customer or the consumer, it's so important because then if I got a full panel, I can consume some of this lion's mane extract and say, wow, I really liked how this one made me feel. And then when I'm going to replicate that down the road, I can purchase more of the product that has that same profile and replicate that versus just like, so-and-so's lion's mane extract, because then it could just be a crapshoot because who knows what the specific composition of those active ingredients are, because it'd be like, it's like buying weed and not knowing anything about it, right? It's like, it's just weed, which is how we did it forever. And it was fine. It was cool. I enjoyed it like that. But now that I have all this data, I can pursue strains of weed that I know that I like. And it's like my coffee. I can pursue, and because I would also like coffee, I would also take it by terroir, right? If you just said this weed was grown in the valley of blah, 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 and I just smoked a bunch of weed from there and it was always good. I'm like, yeah, fuck, I don't care about the numbers then. That's fine.
Fuck it, yeah.
Yeah. So and this kind of is interesting. I got to try some of the feral fungi spagyric extract, and it was good. I understand the whole spiritual side of it, I suppose. I wonder if for him, like as a business, how it seems, I don't know. It seems, I'm glad that he's that passionate about it. And it was a really cool product. I don't know if it was for me or not. Like, I don't know if it's worth the extra bit. And I think it'd be worth the extra bit if you were doing it and there were mushrooms that you grew and you're in this little like closed loop. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, let's use this whole entire thing. And what can we use with this leftover bit? But as a product that you then sell to somebody else that like me, that isn't really that tuned into what you're talking about. I'm like, I guess maybe that's on me for not like being tapped in. Right.
But, so during COVID, the company that I was taking their supplements from, it was called Mushroom Science, and they changed something about their process during COVID due to whatever. But I looked at my wife and was like, hey, this shit's not hitting for you, is it? And she's like, no, it's not. I was like, what the fuck? We've been taking it for like 6-7 years. It was consistent always. But then something happened. And so like I tried Jason, Feral Fungi, I tried his stuff and it got me by, but it was still like, I'm still not getting the same effect that I need. And that's what really made me go, okay, if it's something that I need, I'm going to make it. And if people love it, I'm going to sell it so that I can have an unlimited supply. And so now I'm sitting here with 5-10 gallons of lion's mane extract and I've got my unlimited supply on hand. Like we were talking about earlier, you're grown enough so you can have your own for free. I can't wait to be able to actually like look at my bottle, look at a lab report, and say,
quantify
yeah, fuck yeah, ours is better.
Quantify
and that's what like I think the industry at large needs, because like what really got me into making extracts and researching extracts in the first place was Paul Stamets. He got me into mushrooms. His TED Talks, Mushrooms Can Save the World. I was just fucking high off of my honeymoon phase for psychedelic mushrooms. I saw this TED Talks and was like, wow, mushrooms can save the world. This is amazing. I'm going to buy his lion's mane because lion's mane's doing this awesome shit for me and his is going to be even better. And then I take his shit and I'm like, didn't do anything. Like, what's going on? Like, this is fucked. And so that was 11 years ago that I started really digging into lion's mane and reishi, but mostly lion's mane because it really it helped my brain a lot due to my like service connected bullshit. But so like I don't know. It just pisses me off that people are spending money on wellness products that aren't doing dick for them, and that's really what pisses me off and motivates me to do stuff the way that I do.
You know what actually killed the CBD industry was that, because the growth was great and like it would have been fine, but they shot themselves in the foot because everybody wanted to sell a 10 milligram CBD product that was useless. Just fucking useless, like 10 milligrams. So like to get an effective dose in the CBD world was like, you're spending like $100 a day to get an effective dose of CBD. And it cost fucking pennies to get an effective dose. Like, so I actually started a company, Future Compounds. What I originally started doing was just mixing isolate into coconut oil. I would just heat up some water in my bathtub and I'd have all the little coconut oil jars open and I'd mix isolate in, because it was just giving it to like my friends and family. I started because my uncle got diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so we went through all these, a couple different, protocols. And he found that this coconut oil, he could not only apply topically, but he'd take like a couple tablespoons and I could squeeze like 200 or 300,000 milligrams into the little tub of coconut oil before it started like crashing back out. And that was really effective for him. And I started, posting about it. People were like, hey, my grandma, this, that. So I started like, I was selling it for cost plus shipping out to all these people. And I was like, wait a minute. All right, I can't do this anymore. And my associate in Las Vegas, Kyle, I said, hey, dude, I got this business that we could, start in my likeness. I want to give you 90% of it, right? I don't want to do anything, but here's the idea. It's already like moving forward a couple steps and we could keep our price the same, be profitable enough for this to be a legitimate business. And we're beating the market by like 100-fold. There's nobody even close. Not even the same fucking hemisphere as what we're doing here. Everybody else is selling like at the time, maybe 1,000 milligrams per unit. And we were selling like 500,000 or million milligrams of CBD, just fucking dumped in there, 100 grams of fucking isolate stuffed into some kind of fat. Now we've got a little bit more diverse, but our model is always the same. We're super slim margins. We're a really slim team. We have everybody, it's all toll processed and drop shipped. And the goal being that we can provide the lowest possible consumer, price consumer CBD products. And we also do CBN and CBG, all isolate based. We're very there's definitely some wisdom to like an RSO cannabis extract. We just don't do that. The legality, we stay, if it's not for you, it's not for you, but we have the cheapest isolates in the game, all the way up the line until you're talking about like, you want to get bulk order like 10 or 100 kilos, then you just need to talk to me directly. But I just took my network and we didn't even shop down to the bottom. I found the best producer that had the most reasonable prices, that was consistent, and the product was always the same, and they were reliable. And for a long time, they were very competitive pricing, but they couldn't follow the market down. And we said, I don't want you to. I want you to keep we're already giving this. We're selling it for so little. We don't care. It's not about the margins here. We're just trying to get this out, and so we kept it the same, and that helped keep our main supplier in business through the drop. And now that it's back on the other side, they've stuck with us and kept the prices pretty stable, and the quality is the same. So we use my network to connect the highest quality CBD bulk producer we could to the customer effectively at customer size. Like, customer doesn't always want to buy just a kilo of isolate, which again, we sell. We give out. I got the recipe. It's coconut oil, heat it up till it melts, dump the isolate in, mix it around, boom, good enough. Like, it works great. If you think you can do it for cheaper than us, I urge you to. That was always my model too. I said, look, you can go buy, and part of it was the forum, Future4200. When I first started making this, I said, look, you guys can go do it too. Go on the forum. There's people selling kilos of isolate right there for pretty cheap. If your grandma really needs it, and you can mix it up yourself. You think I'm getting over on you? Go buy it and cut it and make your own products. We have a lot of people that did it and now just buy bulk of that from us, and they got their own breakdown. Like my vitamin D gummies, I've got the same thing. A bunch of guys buy it bulk and they're selling it at some, who knows where they sell it, maybe a market or something. Like maybe they're working a farmer's market and they got it on the side. Whatever, it's good stuff.
So it sounds like, both of us are very much in tune with our individual markets and getting people high quality, accessible products, whether it's, mushrooms or cannabis derivatives. I think that's something that we all want to see. Now, with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Myco Research Solutions. We talked about it a little bit earlier. We talked about Murphy, but let's dig into that and talk about what exactly it is and what the intended goal of Myco Research is. I know you're a 10% partner of Myco Research Solutions, so you're not doing the groundwork. You're not paving the way for anything there. But let's talk about it a little bit and describe from your perspective what it is and what it's doing for the space.
Yeah, well, I was getting a bunch of people asking me if I could teach them how to do mushroom extraction, and I said, "Yeah,
Sure.
but why? I'm not the guy for that. Like, that's silly. I could, and I'm decent at it, but there's got to be a better way." And so I started talking to Murphy, and she was interested, but kind of not interested in the one-on-one consulting, like set you up on a set up your lab. And typically when people start asking those questions, I start looking at the market and say, okay, there's sounds like there's a gap here they don't want to spend 10 grand on a consult, but they want some hands-on experience. So we need some, basically a hands-on lab where they can go learn just basic mushroom extraction. And then we also have a little bit of extension into analytics. Murphy's a pretty accomplished analytical chemist as well. So she can educate on that side of things. And we're actually working with, there might be an exciting new addition to the team. I'll tell you later about it on the analytical side.
Sure.
I'm excited. So it's in Denver now. We were in Loveland, but now we're in Denver, and it's just a 2-day hands-on mushroom extraction and refinement course taught by Murphy Murray. And our next one's coming up. I think maybe like a day or two after you air this. But we'll have another one in a few months after that as well, and we'll continue them on. And then we're investigating. We may do one up in Canada. We have some like native land that we have been invited to come, and Murphy's been invited to come and teach up there. So we might take do a little hop up there and teach. And then we'll probably do like a East Coast-ish one at some point, maybe at the end of the year, maybe at the beginning of the year. I think we're going to. There's another group that we're going to probably collab with. It's kind of tied with that other person I'm going to tell you about, but I think you'll be interested in the potential from it. It'll be a nice synergy. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, when you say East Coast-ish, you need to make sure that it's actually East Coast and come in my backyard. Because like I said before, I'm not leaving my house for almost anything. But I'll go an hour or two away to hang out at one of these classes. So people are going to be able to, in the Myco Research Solutions class, people are going to just learn the high-level overview of mushroom extraction. Is it going to be centered around psychedelics or medicinal or a little bit of both?
On paper and in practice, it's mostly the medicinal, but Murphy's accomplished in all things, and there's a lot going on there that's not necessarily on the print, because we're interested in helping you improve your mushroom extraction game, whatever that means to you, and whatever you want that to mean. She is make sure to cover all the bases during the class.
Sure. Well, and a lot of the things that you can apply to medicinal mushrooms can also translate fairly closely to psychedelics.
Yeah, a lot of it is just basic science, and that's what we've realized. Like a good 50% of the customer base is they're familiar with the mushrooms, but they're just new to extraction science. They've never heard of a rotovap or they don't know what a sock slit is, or like, what are you talking about? Okay, I guess, and they're the type of people that, sure, I could have gone on the internet, but I heard from a guy that I trust that this is the place to come learn. So I figured it's worth my time because I'm about to jump into this business, right? Like, a real common story, like my kid has convinced me to start this business, and I'm doing my research as the dutiful father that's investing into this business with his son. We're doing an extraction lab. There's a lot of those like father-son teams. And we saw that a lot in cannabis too, which is cool. That's a cool model. I hope to have that with my kids someday. Not
well, who knows where it's going to be, when that time comes, who knows what the space is going to look like. On one of my other podcasts, I was talking about, we've got like phytoplankton generating different compounds and algae doing different things. So I'm interested to see what your take on the future of mycology looks like. Let's just call it 5 years. Where do you see the space in 5 years from where it's at now?
I'm not Nostradamus, but I have a niche that I think will be more valuable in 5 years than ever before, and that's gut fungi. And it's like full gut microbiome, so not just the fungi, but the fungi proving to probably be the most important variety of microbes in your gut, and they kind of run the show, which is this would make sense. It'd be weird if that was the one place where the bacteria were in charge. It's not very typical. They're almost always the fungi are in charge, and they just, run the bacteria like cattle effectively and milk them for their exudates. And then that could, because it's probably what's going on with us too, right? The fungi in us are just running us. The gut brain connection, and the more research that's going into that, it's becoming like, and so that's personally for me, that's where I'll be at in 5 years, is a heavy focus on gut microbe, and the production of life around that supports, that healthy gut microbe, which is where we're at right now. That's my like pretty much full on mycology project right now, is like improving my family's gut microbe, specifically my oldest son, but because of him, all of us now. It's been pretty interesting. We're fermenting all the things right now. It's crazy. Like the list of things I got going right now is nuts. The one that I really like, it's called Saccharomyces boulardii. It's a yeast. We're cultivating it just in like a blueberry paste that we boiled and then cooled off. And it can't like propagate in your gut, but it's super competitive against some of the other yeasts at a specific point in your gut where they shouldn't be. Like there's a specific sections of your intestines where yeast plays an important function, but SIBO and SIFO are these overreactions of bacteria and fungi, but also somewhat the yeast components of it as well, in areas that they shouldn't be. Like these ones are okay down here, but they start migrating up, and it's not ideal for them to be there. You would have had a better balance. And so Saccharomyces boulardii is one that it's super competitive with some of these yeasts, and but can't take over because it can't actually live inside of you. So it's just one of the many. We're making like 3 different types of yogurts with different like starting cultures of lactobacillus, which is super interesting too. And having a lot of fun. And then all the normal, like traditional, doing kefir and but all, a bunch of fermented vegetables as well. That's not necessarily I don't eat that. I'll eat a lot of sauerkraut, like sauerkraut and some sour cream together. That's like my fermented go-to right there.
The only thing I ferment, bro, is peppers, and I'll make tempeh. But it's interesting, I've never really thought about the role of fungi in our gut. I've thought about probiotics and beneficial bacteria, but I've never really thought about introducing different fungi to help balance out the gut. What you said, your oldest son, what motivated you to start diving down that rabbit hole?
Just he's got a bunch of like, typical behavioral patterns that would, like, if I sent this kid to school, they'd be like pushing prescription drugs, right? Like,
that's where I'm at with my kid.
Exactly. So he's a 5-year-old boy too, at the same thing. Like I'm trying to weigh that, but there's all these things that you hear that are going around, whatever. I'm trying to optimize my family's health. And he was the impetus for us all to do it. That's really what it boils down to. And it's worked. Like he's sleeping better than before. His like behavior is more, he's nicer, let's say. And the thing is, his mom's, worried, and I'm like, and my grandma, my 90-year-old grandma put it best this summer at my brother's wedding at my parents' house. She looked at me because my son was just terrorizing shit. She looked at me and said, "That's payback." Because I look at him and I say, "Oh, that was me." And Julia didn't know me before I smoked weed. Like up until about 18 years old, I was him. I was that kid. I was really smart and I was a douchebag. I was just like a dick, right? I was just like my dad was gone all the time. I was raised, my mom's like the nicest lady on earth. Like never mean to my mom or anything, but like just that type of situation. So I look at him, I'm like, man, if this kid could smoke weed, he'd be fine. But he can't, I'm not going to get him high all the fucking time. So there's got to be some in between. And it's like focusing on his gut health, even just over the past like month or so. And that's coming from us eating like very well, right? We eat meat that we raised or hunted and plants that we grew in the garden. That's like 90% of our diet here. That's kind of the whole permaculture thing we didn't even really dive into today, but just focusing on some of the ferments and getting his gut right was some of these probiotics that we're feeding him. And I think I lend a lot of it to the kefir. That's a magical fermented dairy right there, that kefir. And you could just do it on your counter. It's crazy. It's so easy.
Yeah. I've had it grow in my pepper ferments on accident before.
The water kefir. Yeah. It's nice in the milk. I really like the milk kefir. But anyways, so in 5 years, there's going to be a huge focus on gut health, and a lot of that is, you know, dependent on, you know, your total. What's interesting about gut fungi is that they are anaerobic, and the ones that they've identified in cattle. This is what really got me started on the whole thing. Is I did cattle and the fungi they fuck with. That was my talk at Myco Fest last year, and I'd gone down this crazy wormhole of research on. First, there was mushrooms growing out of the cow patties here in the field. So I was like, oh, let's look into these. And I started learning about the terms and follow that around. And eventually I found out like the coolest fungi are the ones that live in the gut of a rumen. So like a cow is a ruminating animal. And only recently did they get identified as fungi because they have a flagellum and they're anaerobic. So they don't breathe oxygen and they can actively swim through the gut to find food sources. So they're like, yeah, it's a protozoa or whatever. Just in the last like 10 years got reclassified into fungi. And one of the only fungi that's got this like active propellant and like seems to be able to pursue food sources somehow. That got me into this whole fucking crazy wormhole and led me down the road to, okay, what kind of, do we have anaerobic gut fungi as well? And we do, and it's weird. So yeah, that's where my
the whole
head's
thing's
at.
blowing my mind though. Like just thinking about a fungi moving around in its environment, trying to find food like that. I'm going to have to do a deep dive.
Where
You'll have to
humans
send
came
me what
from, for
information
sure,
you
dude.
can.
That's where humans came from. Right there. Oh yeah,
Bro, that's wild. But yeah, like same thing though with my kid. Like we found like certain things that she was eating were really fucking with her, making her like just agitated, angry, angsty.
Yeah.
And it was like stupid shit, like red dye 40 or whatever. Like, and now she knows, like she checks ingredients before she eats something. She's like, is there any red dye in here?
Yeah.
Like, nah, man. Like, and I didn't believe it at first, but we saw the real change. And so, you know, when you can take better control of your health and what you're putting in your body, it can have dramatic effects that butterfly out throughout, you know, not only your day to day, but throughout your lifetime.
Everything,
so I think that's really
Everything.
cool. And I think that's one thing that separates you from a lot of people is how much you really do give a shit about yourself and your family and your legacy that you're building here. And that's like the one thing that I've taken away from just following you for a few years is, you know, this guy fucks with his family a lot. Like he loves his family wholeheartedly and he's doing everything he can. You know, you get your gummy line. I've taken your gummies. I fucking love your vitamin D gummies. I need to order some more because like I'm not going outside nearly enough now.
Dude,
because it's winter,
these are born of
sun.
necessity, right? Like these are things that we needed in our life. And it was like you said earlier, I didn't want to have to buy them all. And honestly, at first I was just going to go buy them, but I couldn't find anything that didn't suck. And so then I was just going to sell enough of them that I'd have, you know, a year's supply of them. And then these things just fucking snowball. So now we're like doing an Amazon launch. It's crazy.
Oh, bro, you're going on Amazon too with the gummies? That's what's up.
Yeah, we're pretty
That'll
stoked
be cool.
on it. My buddy Rob, the genius CEO, this guy's got the secret to Amazon and can just it's really not that crazy either. It's just there's some back end stuff that you like. If you've done it for a long time, you know the details on how these little systems within Amazon work. But the primary thing is just getting a bunch of organic traffic to your listing right off the bat. That's the key. Like, so if you've got social media that you've got, for us, we just started an Etsy store. He wanted us to try this new plan. It was to start an Etsy store and then harvest all those people from the Etsy store and say, hey, we're launching on Amazon. Come get a free, order a bag and I'll send you, 2 free ones or whatever. I think what I'll do is there's a service that'll send people prepaid Visa cards. So it's like buy a bag and get a free, whatever, $40, get a free bag and $8 extra, right? Like all you have to do is buy it and leave me a review. And if you can get enough of those right off the bat in the first couple of weeks, you get plugged into, and you're doing everything else right on the back end. And then it's Amazon FBA. So I just ship all my stuff to them bulk, basically, like bagged and bulk. They do everything
and they ship
else.
it out for you.
Yeah. So my price per unit shipping right now, if it's like a single bag, if I'm shipping it flat rate, that's like $7. And that's usually what I ship because it's the most reliable. It's like 15 cents with Amazon because you're paying just the pallet rate to get the pallet there. And then they incorporate that into their internal, they get, free shipping. I'm not giving free shipping. Amazon's giving free shipping with their fleet of vehicles. Yeah. So it's really, and they handle all of the customer returns. It's a pretty slick system. We'll see how it goes.
Well, hey man, I wish you the best of luck on that Amazon launch. I'll be the first one to hop on Amazon and grab a bag of those gummies. They're really fucking good.
They are good.
But hey man, I know you got to go, so I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you hopping in, talking about mushrooms, talking a little bit about cannabis, talking about business. We'll have to have you on again and talk about permaculture and do a deep dive into that. I'm gonna do a deep dive into gut fungi because I've never even thought about that in my life. But it's been really cool having you on here, man. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, take care, man.